A very good afternoon to you from the studios of Atlantic Television Network in Port Harcourt. This is ATN International News. Let's take a look at the headlines. Ethiopian Airlines suspends flights to Eritrea. Congo government says 129 killed in attempted prison break. Ugandan Cheptegei getting doused with petrol. U.S. seized Venezuelan president's plane in Dominican Republic. Brazil's Starlink emerges as fresh battleground between Mars. Pope Francis to begin ambitious Asia-Pacific tour. 11 dead after school bus hits students and parents. Russian attacks kill 3, targets railway infrastructure. These and many more stories to come your way in a moment. Please do stay with us. And now on the news in details, we begin with Africa. Ethiopia's state-owned carrier, Ethiopian Airlines, said it has suspended flights to neighboring Eritrea, citing unspecified difficult operating conditions. Eritrea had previously said it would suspend all Ethiopian Airlines flights at the end of this month. ATN learned that the flights from Ethiopia to Eritrea had resumed in 2018 after 2 decades following a peace deal and resumption of diplomatic relations between the two neighbors that earned Ethiopia's Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed a Nobel Peace Prize a year later. 5 diplomats told newsmen that the suspension was a tangible signal, adding that the relationship between Asmara and Addis had soured significantly, but said the risk of conflicts resuming was unlikely for now. The two countries had previously severed ties in 1998, when a 2-year war between the two nations started over their disputed border. Eritrea fought alongside Ethiopia in a war that erupted in November 2020 against regional forces from Ethiopia's Tigray region. But relations sourced once again after Asmara was excluded from the peace talks that ended that conflict 2 years later, and because some of its troops remain in Tigray. Ethiopian Airlines regrets to inform its valued customers traveling to and fro Asmara that it has suspended its flights to Asmara effective September 3rd due to very difficult operating conditions it has encountered in Eritrea that are beyond its control, Ethiopian Airlines said in a statement late on Monday. The airline said it will try to rebook affected passengers on other airlines at no additional cost or offer refunds, but did not give more details on the conditions it was referring to. Eritrea Information Minister Yamani Gebre Meskel did not immediately respond to a request for comment. Ethiopian Airline is ranked the largest in Africa by revenue and profits by the global industry body International Air Transport Association. United Nations support mission in Libya has held talks in Tripoli to resolve a central bank crisis that has led to a blockade of oil production and threatens the worst crisis in year for the major energy exporter. The standoff was triggered by Western factions ousting veteran Governor Sadiq Al-Kabir and shutting down all oil production. The United Nations support mission announced that consultations between Libya and the United States have been concluded with significant understanding, and both sides have agreed to submit a draft agreement for review. The goal is to finalize and sign the agreement on Tuesday. Oil prices rose on Monday, recovering some losses from last week as Libyan oil exports remained halted and concerns about OPEC production eased. Representatives from both sides participated in the talks. Libya's central bank is the sole legal repository of Libyan oil revenues, and it pays state salaries across the country. If those functions are compromised by the current crisis, Libyans will soon feel the pinch. If the struggle for control is prolonged, all state salaries, transfers between banks and letters of credit needed for imports will become impossible, freezing up the economy and Libya's international trade. Eastern factions, including the House of Representatives, Parliament led by Speaker Aguila Saleh, and the Libyan National Army under Commander Khalifa Haftar, opposed the tribally-based Presidency Council's bid to oust Libya's Central Bank Governor Al-Kabir. The oil blockade on Libya's inside is expected to lead the central bank of new funds and decrease the availability of condensate for power plants, potentially leading to long electricity blackouts. The closure of oil fields has resulted in a drop in total production, causing losses of over $120 million over 3 days. The National Oil Corporation reported production at 1.28 million barrels per day on July 20. The crisis threatens to end a 4-year period of relative peace in the OPEC member that for a decade has been split between Eastern and Western factions that have drawn backing from Russia and Turkey respectively. As the state crumbled between rival factions, the Libya Central Bank and National Oil Corporation, the state energy producer were held off limits, ensuring some governmental functions continued, according to report. Democratic Republic of Congo's government said at least 129 people were killed while trying to escape from the central Makala prison in the capital Kinshasa late on Sunday, adding that the situation was now under control. In a statement posted on X early on Tuesday, Interior Minister Shabani Luko said a fire had also broken out in the jail's administrative building, its food depot, and a hospital. Some 59 people were wounded, he added. Earlier, he had said no prisoners had succeeded in escaping, adding that those who tried to escape had been killed. The government was investigating the incident. The breakout attempt occurred around 2 a.m. on Sunday. Prisoners told newsmen that they heard heavy gunfire as well as sound of prisoners outside. Congo's eastern city of Goma held a memorial service on Monday for 200 victims of the conflict between the army and rebels that are waging a renewed insurgency in the vast Central African country's militia-plagued east. The time and circumstances of the killings were unclear. Authorities said all were direct or indirect victims of the fighting, ranging from unarmed civilians to volunteer defense forces. The memorial attendant had traveled from Kinshasa along with local officials and families. AT gathered that the M23 rebels have been waging a fresh insurgency in the vast Central African country's militia-plagued east since 2022. Congo authorities, the United Nations, the United States, and other Western governments have accused Rwanda of backing the group. Rwanda denies the accusations, which have inflamed relations with Kinshasa. The fighting has driven more than 1.7 million people from their homes in North Kivu, taking the total number of Congolese displaced by multiple conflicts to record 7.2 million, according to United Nations estimates. Congo is also the epicenter of an Mpox outbreak. The World Health Organization declared to be a global public health emergency last month. Vaccines are set to arrive within days to fight new strain of the virus. Ugandan marathon runner Rebecca Cheptegei, who competed in last month's Paris Olympics has suffered burns to over 75% of her body after allegedly being doused with petrol by her boyfriend. Local media reported Cheptegei is in a critical condition in hospital in Eldoret, Kenya, after the attack on Sunday afternoon, both Kenyan and Ugandan newspapers said. Trans Nzoia County Police Commander Jeremiah Ole Kosium told newsmen that Cheptegei's boyfriend, named Daniel Ndiema Marangach, was also burnt in the attack, described as a domestic dispute. The 33-year-old Cheptegei, who finished 44 in the Paris, has a house in Kenya where she stays when she trains in the country. The police say they were investigating the issue. United States has seized a plane used by Venezuelan President Nicolas and flown it from the Dominican Republic to Florida after determining that its purchase violated U.S. sanctions. The U.S. Justice Department said on Monday. ATN learned that the seizure of the aircraft amid continuing pressure on Maduro at home and abroad over a contested July 28 election that he claims to have won, while the opposition says its copies of vote tallies show its candidate to be the victor. The Venezuelan government, which confirmed Maduro had used the plane, said in an afternoon statement that the seizure was nothing but piracy, illegal, and a repeated criminal practice by the United States. Maduro, his associates, and the OPEC member states' vital oil sector are under heavy U.S. sanctions, and his handling of the election has raised the prospect that further measures could be imposed. The U.S. Attorney General has announced that a Dassault Falcon 900EX aircraft was illegally purchased for $13 million through a shell company and smuggled out of the U.S. for use by Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro and his cronies. The seizure, which was carried out in collaboration with the Dominican Republic, is an important step to ensure Maduro continues to face consequences for his misgovernance of Venezuela. The U.S. has congratulated opposition candidate Edmundo Gonzalez for winning the most votes in the Venezuelan election, while Maduro and his ruling party allies have criticized Western interference in Venezuelan elections. A Justice Department investigation revealed that in late 2022 and early 2023, Maduro-affiliated individuals used a Caribbean-based shell company to conceal their involvement in the illegal purchase of the aircraft. The plane was then illegally exported from the United States to Venezuela through the Caribbean last year, and since then, to and from a Venezuelan military base and being used for the benefits of Maduro and his representatives, including to transport Maduro on visits to other countries, the Justice Department said. Venezuela's Attorney General's office said Monday that a court has issued an arrest warrant for opposition leader Edmundo Gonzalez, accusing him of conspiracy and other crimes amid a dispute over whether he or President Nicolas Maduro won a July election. An arrest warrant has been issued against opposition leader Juan Manuel Gonzalez in Venezuela, marking a significant escalation in President Maduro's crackdown on the opposition following the disputed election. While the National Electoral Authority and courts claim Maduro won with just over half of the votes, opposition tallies show a resounding victory for Gonzalez. The warrant follows weeks of comments from top government officials who have called for Gonzalez and other opposition members to be jailed. Maduro has defended nations, stating that citizens agree that laws must work and officials do their job. The opposition, Western countries, and international bodies have accused the Venezuelan president-elect, Edmundo Gonzalez, of fraud and alleged inconsistencies in the election. They have demanded full tallies and accused Gonzalez of losing the notion of reality. Opposition has published copies of over 80% of ballot box level tallies on a public website, while the Electoral Council claims the cyber attack prevented its publication of the full tallies. The opposition has denied any wrongdoing and aims to support for Gonzalez, according to report. Venezuelan President Carlos has requested a warrant for the arrest of opposition leader Juan Manuel Santos, who has been accused of usurpating functions, falsifying public documents, instigating disobedience, conspiracy, and association against the Venezuelan state. The government has also launched criminal probes into Machado and the opposition vote tally website, leading to detentions of opposition figures and protesters. Gonzalez, who turned 75, is married and has 2 daughters. The protests have resulted in at least 27 deaths and 2,400 arrests. The U.S. has drafted a list of Venezuelan government officials and family members for sanctions following the election. The ruling party-controlled National Assembly passed a law tightening rules on NGOs and unions, denouncing alleged forced resignations of state employees. The warrant's request came after an aircraft used by Maduro was confiscated in the Dominican Republic. Tensions grow as Brazil's telecoms regulator threatened to sanction Elon Musk's satellite broadband company Starlink after the country's top courts backed a controversial decision to ban social network X from the country. Brazil's President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva also backed the decision, stating that the Brazilian judiciary may signal that the world is not obliged to tolerate Musk's far-right ideology just because he's rich. Musk has expressed his intention to seek a reciprocal seizure of Brazilian assets, but did not specify how. Anatel, a Brazilian telecommunications, they have shut down Elon Musk's messaging platform, Starlink. The regulator is examining all operators to ensure they have complied with the judge's ruling. Starlink has told Anatel it will not remove X from its service until the freeze on its Brazilian bank accounts is lifted. The regulator is currently inspecting all operators to ensure they have shut down Musk's messaging platform. Earlier on Monday, Brazilian Supreme Court panel unanimously upheld the suspension of social media platform X for defying a court order. The suspension was imposed due to X not naming a local legal representative and ignoring a compliance deadline. Justices Flavio Dino, Cristiano Zanin, Carmen Lucia, and Luis Fox sided with Morris, with 3 of the panel's justices suggesting the suspension could be reversed if the platform complied with previous rulings. X was taken down from most Brazilians, but some continue to access it through VPNs. ATN gathered that Brazil, the 6th largest market for X, is currently in a feud with Elon Musk, who owns a controlling share in Starlink. The dispute stems from Moraes' challenge to block accounts accused of spreading misinformation and hate. And Musk claims that Moraes censored users and closed the X office in Brazil without appointing a new representative, leading to the suspension. On Monday, Musk replied exactly to oppose that described the suspension as an attack on freedom of expression and Brazilians' rights. Chief Justice Luiz Roberto Barroso, who was not on the review panel, said that removing legal representatives to avoid complying with court decisions is a behavior that would not be acceptable anywhere in the world. X remain inaccessible for most users in Brazil. Jannik Sinner and Daniil Medvedev are set to face off in the U.S. Open quarterfinals, aiming to capitalize on the gap left by Novak Djokovic and Carlos Alcaraz exits. Sinner made the last 8 for the 2nd time, while Medvedev reached the quarterfinals for the 5th time in 6 years. Iga Swiatek also secured her 6th Grand Slam title. Italian Sinner defeated Paul in the quarterfinals of the New York Open, overcoming a 41 deficit. The match will be tough, with many rallies making Sinner physically prepared. Daniil Medvedev, the only former champion, defeated 34th ranked Burgess with 51 unforced errors. Sinner and Medvedev will meet for the 4th time this year. They have a history of success, winning the Australian Open final and Miami semi-finals. Medvedev plans to focus on Wimbledon, and Jannik focusing on their games and strategies. They will also consider the moment's dues and brains. Jack Draper, the first British man since Andy Murray in 2016, reached the quarterfinals of the US Open by defeating Thomas Machak 6-3, 6-1, 6-2. Draper, who has only dropped serve once in 4 matches, praised Murray's influence and hopes to have halved his career. Meanwhile, Alex de Minaur, the 10th seeded player, won an all-Australian match against Jordan Thompson. Swiatek, the 2022 French Open champion, celebrated her 100th Grand Slam match with a 6-4, 6-1 wins over 16th-ranked Samsonova. Polish tennis player Jana Swiatek will face American 6th seed Pegula in the semifinals, who she beat in the quarterfinals 2 years ago. Pegula made the last 8 for the second time with a 6-4, 6-2 win over Diana Schneider. And Beatriz Haddad-Meyer became the first Brazilian woman to reach the quarterfinals since 1968. Jana Swiatek faces Jessica Pegula in the semifinals, who beat her in the quarterfinals 2 years ago. Pegula made the last 8 for the second time, while Brazilian Beatriz Haddad-Meyer reached the quarterfinals since 1968. 5 people were shot at New York City's West Indian American Day Parade on Monday, marking the latest violence in the annual celebration of Caribbean culture. A gunman opened fire on a specific group of people, causing widespread chaos. The parade, which began hours earlier, was expected to continue into the night. 2 people were critically wounded in the shooting incident, with 3 others expected to survive. The gunman fled and the parade continued until later that night. Police cordoned off an area adjacent to the crime scene. Markers and bystanders were asked to provide video footage of the shooting. The parade continued flowing past, and some attendees were shaken by the violence. Jalisa Bailey, a member of the parade, expressed her sadness over the shooting, stating that it was terrifying to see someone shoot a gun around so many people, including babies, children, and the elderly. Senate Majority Leader Ashok Sharma was marching in the parade at the time and completed the route. The parade, an annual Labor Day event in its 57th year, turns Eastern Parkway into a kaleidoscope of feather-covered costumes and colorful flags as participants make their way down the thoroughfare alongside floats stacked with high speakers playing soca and reggae music. The parade routinely attracts huge crowds who line the almost 2-mile route that runs from Crown Heights to the Brooklyn Museum. It's also a popular destination for local politicians, many of whom have West Indian heritage or represent members of the city's large Caribbean community. Though a joyous occasion, the parade and related celebrations have been plagued by violence over the years. In 2016, over 2 people were killed and several others were wounded near the parade route. The year before, Kari Gabe, an aide to then-Governor Andrew Cuomo, was shot in the head during pre-parade festivities. He died 9 days later. The West Indian American Day Parade has its roots in more traditionally timed. Pre-Lent Carnival celebration started a Trinidadian immigrant in Manhattan around a century ago, according to the organizers. The festivities were moved to the warmer time of year in the 1940s. Multiple cars traveling in the motorcade carrying Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, the Democratic candidate for vice president, crashed in Milwaukee. ATN gathered that the crash happened around 1 p.m. local time on Monday, alongside cars that were at the rear of the motorcade, and were carrying members of the press who traveled with Mr. Walz. However, Mr. Walz was not hurt. Reporters say they were violently thrown forward after being hit from behind, sending the vehicle into the car in front of them. At least 1 person was injured. It is unclear what caused the crash, which occurred on Interstate 794. Vice President Kamala Harris, his running mate, phoned Mr. Walz to check that he was okay, a White House official told newsmen. Mr. Walz said he also received a call from President Joe Biden, One person appeared to have broken an arm and was being treated by medics, according to a pool reporter traveling with Mr. Walls. The affected vehicles pulled over to the side of the road as Mr. Walls continued to head to a scheduled appearance. Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump has confirmed that some of his staff and press members were involved in a traffic accident on the way to a Milwaukee Labor Day event. The incident has not been the first time the campaign has faced a motorcade-related crash, as last week a Georgia policeman crashed his motorcycle while traveling with the campaign convoy. The crash involved a motorcade vehicle, which is often driven by campaign staff with varying levels of professional driving experience. You're watching the international news on Atlantic Television Network. We'll be back after this short break. Please do stay with us. Welcome back, and now to the rest of our stories. We are open for adverts, placements, bookings, and commercials, and you can connect with us and watch us on ATN socials, Facebook and YouTube, Atlantic Television Network, Instagram and TikTok at Atlantic TV Network 1, X formerly Twitter, Atlantic TV Net. Watch us live on our website at atlanticnetwork.tv. Let's take a look at the rest of our stories now. Kamala Harris and Donald Trump are focusing their campaigns on 7 states and on the economy, immigration, and abortion, despite heated debates over character, culture, and democracy. The candidates will debate in 1 week, with Pennsylvania starting in-person absentee voting the week after. Early voting will begin in 4 states by the end of the month, with a dozen more to follow by mid-October. Both camps acknowledged that victory is not a sure thing as they begin the 8-week sprint to Election Day. Harris' campaign has cast itself as the clear underdogs in the contest, while Trump rejects any indicators suggesting Harris is ahead. Kamala Harris, the Democratic nominee, has breathed new life in political prospects, particularly across the Sun Belt states of Arizona, Georgia, Nevada, and North Carolina. All 4 states have significantly numbers of African Americans and Latinos, traditionally Democratic constituencies, who are down nationally on Biden, but appear to have come home to rally behind Harris. South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham brokered a peace between Trump and Georgia Governor Brian Kemp, whose feud threatened to undermine the Republican effort in the state. Republican pollster Paul Schumacher, an advisor to North Carolina Senator Thom Tillis, said even a slight uptick in the black vote has the potential to give Harris the edge in the North Carolina. Trump remains decidedly on offense in the Midwestern battlegrounds of Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, which form the so-called Democratic Blue Wall. Harris' team is on pace to outspend Trump's camp 2-to-1 in television advertising over the next 2 months. Both Democratic and Republican candidates are in close races across 7 swing states. An AP NOC poll shows many independents find both candidates unsatisfying. Harris has a slight advantage on key traits among independents, while Trump is about even on others. About 3 in 10 independents believe Harris is more honest and committed to democracy, while less than 2 in 10 believe Trump is better. Both candidates are perceived as capable of winning the election and handling crisis. The U.S. presidential race may be decided by the candidates who can effectively portray themselves as a change candidate, as 7 in 10 voters believe the country is heading in the wrong direction. Trump, who won the 2016 election, continues to energize frustrated voters. Hillary Clinton, the first woman president, could make a convincing case for a new direction. However, Democratic strategist James Carville is concerned about underperformance in blue wall states. The last batch of 45 Hong Kong activists have entered the final pleas for light sentences in a landmark national security trial, facing charges of forming a conspiracy to subvert state power under a sweeping national security law imposed in 2020. George Andrew Chan said on Tuesday that the 45 would be sentenced at a later date that is yet to be decided. A total of 47 activists were arrested and charged in 2021 for participating in an unofficial poll to select pro-democracy candidates for a 2020 Legislative Council election. The defendants are accused of plotting to force the government to meet 2019 protest demands, including genuine universal suffrage. By planning to indiscriminate, 5 convicted activists started mitigation hearings to hopefully reduce their potentially heavy sentences in 6 batches and hearings spanning from 3 months from June. Gwyneth Ho, a vocal defendant in the Hong Kong cases, has denied having any mitigation to enter, potentially leading to a longer sentence. Anthony Wong, a friend of Ho, expressed his support for her and others. Meanwhile, activist Owen Cho expressed his belief that a democratically elected government will eventually arrive in Hong Kong, despite being in jail for fighting for democracy. Cho hopes to regain his personal freedom and proudly say that he didn't waste his years in prison. Ventus Lau, a former Hong Kong police officer, defended himself in person, stating that he aimed to support protesters arrested for rioting but not veto the budget. He claimed that the primary pre-selection pool was not illegal and that legal professionals and police helped maintain order. Prosecutors Mike Lam, one of the witnesses, claimed to have been influenced by overseas power and sensationalism and had taken national security courses. Lam's request for community service was rejected by the judges who deemed it unreasonable. Dozens of excited Indonesians waved on Tuesday as a motorcade carried Pope Francis through the capital as he began the first leg of an ambitious Asia-Pacific tour, expected to urge global action on climate change as part of his longest trip yet. The 87-year-old pontiff, who will also visit East Timor, Singapore and Papua New Guinea over the next 10 days, was seated in a wheelchair as a lift disembarked him from a chartered aircraft at Jakarta Airport. 2 children in traditional clothes presented a bouquet of local produce before the Pope was greeted by Indonesia's religious affairs minister, its Vatican envoy and several of its bishops on a red carpet flanked by honored guards. Francis then drove off in a waiting car, waving and smiling. As his motorcade passed through Jakarta towards the Vatican embassy, where he is staying, small crowds of people were seen waving excitedly. The aging Pope was not set to attend any public events on Tuesday to allow him time for rest after the 13-hour overnight flight from Rome. But shortly after arriving at the embassy, Francis held an informal meeting with a group of refugees living in Indonesia. The Vatican gave few details, but said the group included persons from Somalia, Sri Lanka, and members of the persecuted Rohingya minority from Myanmar. Pope Francis is set to embark on a 12-day Asia-Pacific tour covering nearly 33,000 kilometers. During his flight to Jakarta, he spent half an hour greeting journalists and offered a few words about his upcoming trip. As the leader of the world's 1.4 billion Catholics and the Vatican's head of state, Francis wired customary greetings to every country he crossed, including Iran, India, Pakistan, and Turkey, offering prayers of peace, hopes for prosperity, or divine blessings. Pope Francis will address Indonesia's political leaders and participate in an interreligious meeting at Southeast Asia's largest mosque, the Istiqlal Mosque. He is expected to continue advocating for addressing the dangers of a warming globe. Jakarta, Indonesia's capital, is vulnerable to climate change due to chronic flooding and sinking land. Indonesia, the world's most populous Muslim-majority nation, has a Catholic population of just 3%. Indonesian President Joko Widodo welcomed Francis, stating that the two countries shared a commitment to peace and prosperity. Russian President Vladimir Putin received a red carpet welcome on Tuesday on a state visit to Mongolia, whose failure to arrest him under a warrant from the International Criminal Court was criticized by Ukraine as a blow against justice. Putin was greeted by Mongolian counterpart Ukhnagin Kurelsuk in Ulaanbaatar, where he kissed a young girl and presented him with flowers. An International Criminal Court arrest warrant was issued last year, requiring 124 member states, including Mongolia, to arrest Putin and transfer him to the Hague of trial if he enters their territory. Ukraine's Foreign Ministry spokesperson, Hori Tiki, criticized Mongolia for allowing an accused criminal to evade justice, sharing responsibility for war crimes in his words. Ukraine plans to work with allies to ensure Mongolia feels the consequences. The International Criminal Court warrant accuses Putin of illegally deporting hundreds of children from Ukraine. The Kremlin has rejected the accusation, saying it is politically motivated. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said last week that Moscow had no worries about any action in connection with the warrant, as Russia had a great dialogue with Mongolia and all aspects of the visit had been discussed in advance, adding that their relations with Mongolia are among the priorities of their foreign policy in Asia. The Mongolian leader said he hoped the visit would boost trade and economic cooperation between the two countries. Mongolia is on the planned route of a major pipeline that Russia wants to construct in order to carry 50 billion cubic meters of natural gas a year from its Yamal region to China. The project, Power of Siberia 2, is part of Russia's strategy to compensate for the loss of most of its gas sales in Europe since the start of the Ukraine war. 11 people were killed in China's eastern Shandong province on Tuesday after a school bus lost control at a busy pedestrian junction, broadcaster CCTV reported, with disturbing footage showing bodies lying on the road and trapped under the vehicle. 6 parents and 5 children were killed in the incident, while some remain in critical condition. More than 24 were injured, CCTV said. Dongping Police Department said in a statement on WeChat that a vehicle picking up students lost control at the junction in Dongping County, Shandong, on Tuesday morning. The incident is under investigation, it added. ATN learned that in July, a motor vehicle ploughed into pedestrians in Hunan province, killing 8 people. In May, a bus carrying 45 passengers, including 39 students, collided with a truck in Jiangsu province, partly due to negligent driving. Traffic accidents, often deadly, are common in China because of weak enforcement of traffic rules and a lack of safety awareness. China's People's Daily newspaper said on Sunday that China was urging measures at primary and secondary schools across the country to ensure safety of students and school, including preventing safety hazards on campus. safe use of school buses and traffic patrols. Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida will visit Seoul on September 6 to 7 for a summit with South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol, Yoon's office said on Tuesday. The leaders will review progress on the efforts to step up cooperation between the countries and discuss ways to deepen their partnership ahead of Kishida's resignation this month. Since taking office in 2022, Yoon has made it a diplomatic priority to mend ties with Japan and improve security cooperation to tackle North Korea's military threats, bringing about a thaw in often icy relations between the neighbors. Yoon's outreach has also paved the way for South Korea, Japan and the United States to strengthen trilateral security cooperation, culminating in a historic summit between the three leaders in Camp David last year. Kishida has announced that he will step down in September, choosing to end a 3-year term marred by political scandals and rising cost of living. Yoon said last week that cooperation with Japan and the United States would continue despite imminent change in leaders in Tokyo and Washington. Kishida is expected to provide constructive advice for his successor on foreign policy and future development of bilateral ties based on his experience, Yoon's office said in a statement. Pakistan's Prime Minister Sharif said on Tuesday that his government was working on implementing conditions from the International Monetary Fund to complete its loan program, which he hoped would be the country's last. Pakistan signed an International Monetary Fund staff-level agreement on July 12 for a new $7 billion US dollars program due to last 37 months. But Islamabad is still waiting for the fund's executive board to approve it, pending confirmation of financing assurances from development and bilateral partners. Local media said Pakistan's International Monetary Fund approval had been delayed due to a lack of additional financing and unpaid energy sector subsidies announced by Punjab and the federal government. Punjab Information Minister Asma Bukhari said in a statement that the federal government and the International Monetary Fund had not contacted the province about the electricity subsidy and the fund had not released a written statement. She added that the media should avoid speculations about national matters. The IMF, Pakistan's Finance Ministry, and its Power Ministry did not immediately respond to requests for comment. Reigning in unresolved debt across Pakistan's power sector is a top concern of the IMF. ATN gathered that Pakistan's poor and the middle classes are still feeling the effects of a $3 billion IMF bailout that was completed in April, which included 12 months of power tariff hikes. Higher tariffs have led to a decline in household power consumption, with annual power use expected to fall for the first time in 16 years. Pakistan is making progress with the IMF to secure board approval in September, according to Finance Minister Mohammed Orgrambes. The country is in the advanced stages of securing $2 billion in external financing, which is required for IMF approval. Moody's upgraded Pakistan's rating to CAA2. 8-year-old boy was among 2 killed in Russian attacks on Zaporizhia, Dnipro, and railway infrastructure in 2 regions. A 3rd person died in a missile attack on Dnipro. Russia also targeted Chernichiv's energy facility, according to report. The Interior Ministry said the overnight strike on a hotel complex in Zaporizhia killed a woman and her son, injuring her husband and teenage daughter, who is receiving intensive care. The explosion sounded minutes after the air alert came on. Ama Shavenko, an employee at a gas station near the hotel, told newsmen. The past day saw 313 attacks and instances of shelling on 11 settlements, damaging several buildings in Zaporizhia. Regional Governor Ivan Faradov said, including a missile attack on the city of the same name, which is the region's administrative center. The Ukrainian Air Force said it shot down 27 out of 35 drones during Russia's overnight attack, which also used 4 missiles. There was no immediate comment from Russia. Moscow denies targeting civilians in the war. It started with a full-scale invasion of its smaller neighbor in 2022. Ukraine's energy ministry said the drone attack on an energy facility in the northern region of Kamenev injured 3 employees. The overnight attack also took away infrastructure and rolling stock in the northeastern region of Sumy and central Dnipropetrovsk region, according to Ukraine's state railways. Mykolaiev's regional Governor Vitaly Kim said a missile attack on the southern region did not result in any casualty. His regional governor, Ruslan Krashchenko, reported no damage to critical infrastructure or casualties after defenses intercepted incoming fire. He said debris caused fires in forest areas and minor damage to high-rise buildings. Late on Monday, Russian forces also launched missiles at the central city of Dnipro, killing 1 person and injuring 6. Serhiy Lyasak, the regional governor of Dnipropetrovsk, said on Telegram. However, newsmen could not verify the reports. Britain's chief rabbi criticized the government's decision to suspend some arms export licenses to Israel only a few days after the killing of 6 Israeli hostages in Gaza. He said the move would bolster unfounded claims that Israel was in breach of international humanitarian law. Britain's Foreign Minister David Lammy said on Monday that the government had suspended 30 of 350 British arms export licenses with Israel due to a risk the equipment could be used to commit serious violations of international humanitarian law. Russian forces are advancing faster in eastern Ukraine than in a long time, taking several square kilometers per day. According to President Vladimir Putin, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky acknowledged the difficulties in the east, but Russia's military has made no further advances in the past 2 days. Russian forces control 18% of Ukraine, despite a Ukrainian incursion into Russia's southern Kursk region. The numerically stronger Russian army is pushing through settlements in eastern Ukraine towards Pokrovsk. Putin stated that the offensive in Donbass has not been moving at such a pace for a long time, and that Russian forces are bringing territories under control by square kilometers. Ukraine faces difficulties in confronting Russian brigades on the Eastern Front, and Dutch Prime Minister Dick Schoof has been in discussions with Commander-in-Chief Alexander Sersky of 2 days. Ukrainian-born pro-Russian military blogger Yuri Podolyaka reports a stabilized situation in villages near Pokrovsk, while intense battles are crippling Seldov and Ukraine. Both sides are pushing forces into battles for these towns, which had populations of over 20,000 and 10,000 respectively. Russian forces have taken control of the village of Shun, east of Pokrovsk, and driven Ukrainian forces out of a part of Selidov. The move aims to break through Ukrainian defensive lines and increase their sway over the Pokrovsk-Donetsk road. Russia has been trying to expel Ukrainian forces from the Kursk region after Kyiv's incursion, partly to pressure Russia to scramble forces from other fronts. And that's the international news for today. Before we go, another look at the